The Anglo-Egyptian Condominium was a unique form of colonial rule established in Sudan by the British and the Egyptians in 1899. It lasted for over 50 years until Sudan gained its independence in 1956. The condominium marked a significant change in the political landscape of Sudan, which had previously been ruled by various Islamic empires and local sultanates. The condominium was established as a result of the defeat of the Mahdi state by the British in 1898. The British and the Egyptians agreed to jointly administer Sudan, which they considered as a strategic territory for the control of the Nile River and the trade routes of East Africa. The condominium was based on a series of agreements between the two powers, which established a framework for the joint administration of Sudan. Britain was responsible for the northern regions of Sudan, while Egypt was responsible for the south. The Anglo-Egyptian Condominium was characterized by its dual nature. On the one hand, it was a colonial enterprise, with the British and the Egyptians exerting control over Sudanese affairs. On the other hand, it was a unique form of colonialism, with the two powers working together to rule Sudan. This unique form of colonialism meant that the condominium was often marked by tensions between the British and the Egyptians over issues such as taxation, military recruitment, and the administration of justice. The condominium was also marked by significant cultural and political differences between the north and south of Sudan. The northern regions were predominantly Muslim and Arabic-speaking, while the south was largely Christian and animist. The condominium's administration was centralized in the north, which resulted in the marginalization of the south. The British and the Egyptians did little to address the social and economic disparities between the two regions, which fueled tensions and conflicts that persisted long after Sudan gained independence. During the early years of the condominium, the British and the Egyptians implemented a series of reforms aimed at modernizing Sudan. They built infrastructure, established schools, and introduced modern agriculture techniques. However, these reforms were largely concentrated in the north, which resulted in the southern regions being left behind. The condominium's administration was also marked by the imposition of a series of laws and regulations that were often arbitrary and did not take into account Sudanese customs and traditions. The condominium was also marked by significant resistance from the Sudanese people. The Mahdiist rebellion was followed by a series of uprisings, most notably the White Flag and Black Flag movements, which were aimed at resisting British and Egyptian rule. These uprisings were often brutally suppressed, with the British and the Egyptians using military force to maintain their control over Sudan. The condominium was also marked by significant economic exploitation. The British and the Egyptians extracted resources such as cotton and gum arabic from Sudan, which were then exported to Europe. This economic exploitation fueled the development of the north, but did little to benefit the south. Sudan's natural resources were also exploited by foreign companies, which further marginalized the Sudanese people. In the years leading up to Sudan's independence in 1956, the British and the Egyptians began to implement a series of reforms aimed at addressing some of the social and economic disparities in Sudan. They established a legislative council, which provided a platform for Sudanese representation in government. They also began to implement policies aimed at improving social services in the south. However, these reforms came too late. The tensions and conflicts that had been fueled by the condominium persisted, and the north-south divide remained a significant obstacle to Sudan's development. After independence, Sudan was plagued by a series of conflicts and civil wars, many of which were rooted in the legacies of the condominium.